evening. Hello, everybody. I am Rose Bishop and welcome to The Leak. Let's start off tonight with taking a look at what's been happening in the news. In election egg news, again, a protester attempted to egg work experience Prime Minister Scott Morrison at a CWA meeting, but the egg emerged unscathed this time. Sky News actually had the biggest coup in their coverage of the egging story, as they were lucky enough to score an interview with the actual egg that hit the PM. There he is. The protester who threw the egg at the PM in Albury has been charged with one case of common assault and is also being charged with possession of marijuana. She's set to face the Albury local court, which to date is actually the most severe punishment a white person has ever received in relation to drug possession. Fun. In other news, 2 strands of a dangerous viral infection are currently sweeping the nation, and I'm not talking about the Labor and Liberal parties. I'm talking about the flu. Some particularly deadly strains of the influenza virus are currently circulating, with a death toll of 25 people already this year in Queensland alone. To fight the deadly twin viruses, experts recommend getting plenty of fluids, plenty of rest, and voting Greens for the love of God. Experts recommend vaccinating against the flu, but they warn that whilst there is, of course, no evidence that vaccinations cause autism, there is still a risk that they could cause weird and unpleasant short-term side effects like fever and Clive Palmer. Foodora, the bicycle delivery company, is leaving Australia despite owing nearly $8 million in unpaid wages and superannuation to delivery riders. Who would have guessed that a food company named after an actual fedora would turn out to be shifty? According to the app, the unpaid wages will be paid out and are due to arrive in 30 days. No, 40 days? Oh, this money's never coming, is it? Speaking of startups, an Uber driver in the US was recently laid off after it came to light that his background check had failed to pick up on the fact that he was an accused war criminal. Apparently, Uber screens its drivers about as thoroughly as Pauline Hanson screened her One Nation candidates this year. The driver is currently facing legal proceedings related to his alleged war crimes, which is great news and hopefully only the start for rideshare-based justice, because as far as I'm concerned, any Uber driver who doesn't offer me a mint and asks me open-ended questions about what I've been up to lately should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Leave me alone. In Jizz news, a batch of bull semen has broken sales records after selling at auction in Adelaide for $67,000. The semen from highly prized Wagyu bulls will ultimately be used to breed the contents of your next slightly upmarket Macca's burger. The semen itself is stored in straws, which is probably good news for all the marine life affected by pollution from disposable straws, because that visual makes me want to never, ever drink out of one again as long as I live. In the US, 3 women recently bought a box of Lego from a second-hand shop while visiting South Carolina, only to find that the box was actually filled with about $40,000 worth of methamphetamine. The women were thrilled, saying to reporters, with the money we'll make selling off this meth, we'll finally be able to afford some actual Lego. Now, as always, on to One Nation, who continue to be a surprise frontrunner in the race to be the horniest party this election, after the candidate for the WA seat of Canning, Jackson Reeford, posted pictures of himself showing off his incredibly jacked body. One Nation, the party stacked with racists and stacked racists. Reeford is campaigning to be the new member for Canning, which is ironic as his member is the only part of him that he actually hasn't shown Canning yet. And from my end, much as the American public called on Trump to show them his tax returns, I now call on Jackson Reeford here on The Leak to do the right thing, be a true public servant and show us that dick. Much as Trump once called on Obama to show us his birth certificate, I call on Reeford to show us that dick certificate. I don't know what that means, but I want to see it. Give the people what I want, because I'll tell you what, he might be deeply anti-immigration, but I would open my borders for that guy, if you know what I mean. I don't know what I mean. We'll just, actually, can we just see that picture again? There it is. Reeford's campaign so far has focused on ceasing foreign aid and reinvesting the resulting $4.2 billion worth of savings back into Australia, presumably to spend on protein shakes in order to sustain one of Australia's greatest natural resources, dat butt. There it is. We've had to blur it out, but rest assured it's very good. I could do these jokes all day, but I won't. I'll just say this. Going into the polls, Reeford is asking people to number his box, but I just want to state for the record that if he is keen, he can put his number in my box any day of the week. I'll even let him vote below the line. Sorry, I'm not actually even sure what that last one meant. I'll get someone to ice me down in the break. It'll be fine. And finally, in environment news, Scott Morrison has identified a bill that restricts testing makeup on animals as an example of his government taking action on the extinction of 1 million plant and animal species due to climate change, which was raised by a landmark UN report. I'm personally not sure how protecting animals from animal testing helps climate change, but I can only assume that Morrison thinks that the animals will have more time to recycle if they don't have to fuss about with putting on a full face of makeup every day. So that is it from me. I am going to get some ice and we'll be right back. Thank you. And we're back, and we are back to talking about climate change because it continues to be one of the most important topics of the current election campaign. A recent Lowy Institute poll shows that Australians are more concerned about climate change this election than at any time since 2007, with 61% of poll respondents saying climate change should be addressed now, and the remaining 39% saying it should be addressed 15 years ago. To talk more about the critical role that climate change is playing in this election campaign is the Leak's political correspondent, Katherine Allan.
Thank you, my lady. It's great to be here.
Katherine, I do have to ask though, what is with the dragon?
What dragon?
Right there on your shoulder.
Rose, why would I have a dragon on my shoulder? I am the Leak's chief political correspondent.
Well, you are a political correspondent, yep.
I am also Daenerys of House Targaryen, the first of her name, the unburnt, Queen of the Andals, the Rhaenor, and the First Men, Queen of Meereen, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, Protector of the Realm, Lady Regent of the Seven Kingdoms, Breaker of Chains, and Mother of Dragons.
Right. Okay, I see. You want to talk about that HBO show that you like, the one on television?
Climate change. I want to talk about climate change. I'm a serious political journalist. I've done my research and everything. Strap in. According to a recent study, several World Heritage sites are at severe risk of coastal flooding and erosion due to rising sea levels, with some areas predicted to become completely submerged in less than 100 years.
I mean, that is awful. I mean, could you take us through which sites are most at risk? Could we get a map of that?
Yeah, can we get a real map, please? Thank you, thank you. I mean, you are students, it's okay. You're learning, it's fine. So as we can see here, it is the city of Braavos, located in a lagoon off the northwestern end of Essos, where the narrow sea and the shivering sea meet, that it's at the most risk of devastation from climate change. This is in addition to the damage already caused to Winterfell in Westeros's battle just 2 weeks ago.
I mean, Katherine, I know you love Game of Thrones, and if you want to talk about the show, that's okay. We could just edit this segment out. I mean, do you want to tell me which Star Trooper captured the Iron Sword this week?
Okay, first of all, how dare you? And second of all, I am not a television recapper. I am a chief political correspondent. And Katherine, the first of her name, Targaryen.
I know. Okay, Katherine, how about you just give us a little bit more insight into what exactly climate change is and how it's currently turned into the hottest, no pun intended, topic of this election campaign?
Well, Lady Rose of Perth, there really is no doubt as to why climate change is seen as such an important issue to so many Australians. I mean, our children's lives are at stake. We've spent decades pretending that climate change isn't real, convincing ourselves that we have done all we can to prevent the impending doom from coming for our livelihood. But the great battle has already begun.
Oh, okay, I get it. So you're describing climate change as a battle, since it's the ultimate battle for humanity's survival against the impending forces, environmental forces threatening to defeat us all. Yeah.
Exactly. If by humanity you mean the people of Westeros, and by impending environmental forces you mean the White Walkers.
No, I mean a change in global or regional climate patterns attributed largely to the increased levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by the use of fossil fuels.
Exactly, fossil fuels being the stream of blue flames used by the ice dragon Viserion to destroy the wall protecting Westeros from the army of the dead.
Okay, so we get it. So you're making a parallel between the fictional narrative of the show and the real life implications of climate change, because the characters represent our Earth's inevitable demise while our politicians continue to refuse to acknowledge it.
What characters?
I mean the characters from that show that you're very clearly obsessed with.
What show?
Game of Thrones.
Never heard of it.
Katherine, you've got it on your t-shirt and you've got a dragon on your shoulder.
That's not a dragon. That's my son. Are you denying that my son is real? Are you denying the facts, Rose?
I mean, I am denying that the toy dragon on your shoulder is your son.
Look into my son's eyes and tell him that.
Katherine, do you even know what climate change is?
You're right. I know nothing.
I mean, I didn't say you know nothing.
But if I know nothing, then tell me this. How did this coffee cup get there? You know nothing, Rose Bishop.
Everyone, please thank Katherine. She'll be going to calm herself down now. Thank you, Katherine. Thank you, Dragon. And now on to the federal election, which in exciting news for people who have both eyes and ears is almost over, thank Christ. Because, I mean, politicians are full of bullshit, right? Like, they know what they're saying is bullshit, and we know what they're saying is bullshit, and they know that we know that what they're saying is bullshit, but nonetheless, every few years, out it comes. Out they come with their bullshit. They buy a bunch of ad space with their ill-gotten corporate bribe money, and they bullshit at us from the loudest billboards and the most colourful radio ads the human hearing register will tolerate. But if there's one thing I really appreciate about kids, apart from when they maintain a respectful distance and keep their horrible sticky fingers to themselves, it's that kids don't put up with that bullshit. Like in this picture that we'll see, capturing the moment that these two kids realised they'd been cast as the "See, I'm not a racist" props for Tony Abbott's Instagram. There they are, aren't they ethnic? So they're lovely. The campaign trail is full of trials, tribulations and terrors, or as I like to call them, campaign whoopsies. Joining me to discuss them now are Katherine Allan and Jordan Barr. Hello.
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 It's nice to be here for the first time ever on this program.
I don't know who that dragon woman was before, but it's nice to have you, Katherine.
She was a bit nuts, wasn't she?
Hey.
So first up, the tragic tale that we touched on before of Prime Minister Scott Morrison almost getting literal egg on his face, as opposed to the metaphorical sort that he gets every time he opens his mouth. Clearly inspired by the egging of far-right Senator Fraser Anning a few years ago. A copycat protester threw an egg at Scott Morrison's head at a CWA function, but it bounced right off. That was the most upsetting part for me. The lack of closure.
It bounced right back.
It bounced right back.
Well, it just kind of, it does make you wonder, like, what's his head made out of? You know, because if that's bouncing right off you, rubber, right?
I mean, not to brag, but I've handled eggs before, and
I
they
bet
break
you have.
pretty easily.
Maybe that was just his way of sending it back to the kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
He
Great.
just wasn't happy.
In another attack on Scott Morrison, gone awry, one woman mixed up this election's two potential prime ministers recently and called Bill Shorten a prick by mistake. Did you see this? She just literally got them mixed around.
You're forgiven for getting your wires crossed with prime ministers at this point. Like,
But
been
they're
so many.
so ethnically and gender diverse.
yeah.
Just for reference, this is what Bill Shorten actually looks like. There he is. He's not the baby. He's the one greeting the baby, and that photo was taken right before that baby called Bill Shorten a prick, presumably having confused him for Scott Morrison.
I also enjoy the editing of this photo. It looks like it was actually taken in the 60s after he's just walked on the moon. You know what I mean? Like portraying him as that astronaut leader that we've all been looking for.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to make him look a little bit dirty, like someone who's done work ever.
Bill's dirty enough.
Oh, that rude baby calling him a prick. So in one of the worst election blunders so far, Murray Angus, this is a weird one, a Liberal candidate in Geelong was disendorsed after saying that his Labor candidate was a good bloke.
Ah, see, you just meant to say prick again, didn't you?
Yeah.
He's just confused.
He got him
Getting them mixed up.
mixed up with Scott Morrison again. So it's so easy to do. I mean, I haven't seen the guy that he called a good bloke in question, but I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say he was probably an old white guy.
Oh, absolutely. And isn't calling someone a good bloke like how straighties sort of come on secretly?
Yeah.
Is that some...
Yeah, I mean,
Some
it's definitely
gay?
what guys get, like, really
So,
enthusiastically.
good.
Yeah.
Bloke I'd like to penetrate sexually. That's,
Yeah.
that's what they say.
That's what
Yeah.
that means. That's what that means.
All
The
the-
back
all the
slapping,
time.
it's just...
I'm sure there's a lot
Yeah.
of good bloke coming from that One Nation candidate as well. And coming right at him.
Farmer wants a good bloke.
And a large poke.
You meant prick again. You
Prick,
meant,
I meant
getting them
prick, yeah,
confused.
yeah.
So to finish up, here we have Scott Morrison out on the campaign trail, pictured just before he actually smacked that little boy's head clean off, shattered on the pavement like a watermelon. So that's the campaign whoopsies taken care of. That's all the campaign news that you need. Don't dare look at any others.
With the child.
The child,
getting
yeah.
killed.
Oh, and all the rest of it. It's all
great.
very accurate.
Whoopsie.
You heard it here first. So Katherine Allan and Jordan Barr, everybody. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to The Leak. And switching to a more serious topic now, Sri Lanka has been in the global spotlight recently following a horrific attack on Easter Sunday when bombers targeted 3 churches and 3 hotels in central Colombo, Kochikade, Negombo and Batticaloa. I have been practicing those all day. Joining me to talk about the developing situation is the Places Other Than Here correspondent, Roo. Welcome, Roo.
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, it is safe to say that Sri Lanka has been through enough as it is. Not only has Sri Lanka endured 26 years of civil war and the Boxing Day tsunami, they've also had to put up with Mahinda Rajapaksa.
Okay, so I've just realised I'm probably going to need a lot of explaining here. Who is that?
He was the country's former president and he ended the civil war.
Oh, that's good then.
Not really. Well, he only managed to end it by committing many immoral acts, including institutional genocide. It's okay if you didn't know about that. The Sri Lankan government kept it pretty hush-hush. I'll put it this way. Rajapaksa is basically the Donald Trump of South Asia.
Okay. So does he wear an ill-fitting toupee as well?
No, but he wears many rings. I mean more that he's a horrible person whose people inexplicably love him. At the height of his tenure, he actually had an approval rating of 91%, beating reigning champion Vladimir Putin at 81%.
There you go. Can we talk about the rings though? Why does he have? I realise this is hypocritical. I'm wearing many, but why does he wear so many rings?
Yeah, it's weird to think that after his stints with corruption, nepotism, and covering up war crimes, Rajapaksa will most likely be remembered as a dude who wore like many rings, like 8 at a time, because it's easier to fixate on rings and say a bad haircut than to actually call them out on their corruption.
Yeah, he's got like 8 rings on there. Like, what is he compensating for? What you doing, Mahinda?
Us Lankans call him the Lord of the Rings.
God, even the Dark Lord Sauron managed to keep it down to 1 ring.
Yeah. Regardless, Rajapaksa is being eclipsed at the moment by his successor, President Maithripala Sirisena. If Rajapaksa is Sauron, then Maithripala is basically like Sauron's Lord Morgoth, if you know what I mean.
We might have lost the audience on that one.
No Tolkien fans, All right. That's cool. Let me put it simply. If Rajapaksa was a flaming dumpster, Maithripala is like the eternal tire fire from The Simpsons.
That I can work with, yep.
Maithripala's response to the Easter bombings has just been a total disaster, to be frank. Basically, the Sirisena government has passed a law that effectively bans Sri Lankan citizens from wearing burqas and niqabs. A decision that was apparently taken to further support the ongoing security and help the armed forces easily identify the identity of any wanted perpetrators.
Were burqas used in the planning and execution of those attacks?
Nah, nope. Sirisena obviously has some kind of personal vendetta against this particular women's garment.
I get it. I've had an ongoing feud with a bra for several years now. I assume, though, that in his case he just saw one on Pauline Hanson in Parliament that time and thought, we don't want her sneaking into our country.
Yeah, I mean, as terrifying...
Burqa, obviously, not a bra. Please, God, no.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely a burqa. As terrifying as the imagined Hanson threat is, full burqa, the real problem with the burqa ban is that it's irrelevant. It does nothing to prevent further acts of terror. The government is so misguided in their response that they don't realise they're a victim of terrorism attacking another victim of terrorism, like the working class attacking the poor because the wealthy got a tax break. So we need to refocus our attention on the true problem, the Nazgul.
Is that the name of a terrorist group over there?
They terrorise the Shire.
No, no more Lord of the Rings, Roo, I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. So the issue is no more than 10% of the nation's population is Muslim, many of them living in small dispersed communities. Banning the burqa places an added target on innocent Muslim citizens. This is nothing but a Trojan horse that erodes the civil liberties of minorities. When ISIS took credit for the Easter bombings, they claimed it was revenge for the Christchurch shootings. But when the world realized that responding to a terrorist attack in one country by bombing another country doesn't make sense, ISIS just retreated right back into their sick bachelor pads, where they're probably passing like all their time Googling Leonardo DiCaprio and wondering like if they hate him or like him, like as we all do, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I always kind of wanted to be the Rose to his Jack, old Leo, but then I realised recently he's probably been in more vaginas than Libra, so that's out.
You can join my subreddit, DiCaprio or DiCaprino. Yeah.
Good.
In the weeks since the attacks and the establishment of the burqa ban, Sri Lanka has been experiencing a slew of anti-Islam riots and propaganda. Initially spearheaded by the police and the media, though now the general public have taken anti-Islam action into their own hands, like Islamophobic Batmen. A nationwide curfew has been enforced. This ongoing violence is proof that fighting hatred with hatred is not the answer.
So what can we do to break the cycle?
Let's start with reforming our approach to counter-terrorism. Findings from the Global Terrorism Research Centre suggest most terrorism is homegrown and that terrorists are politically motivated. So by cracking down on immigration and religious freedoms, governments are creating breeding grounds for terrorist action. Professor Greg Barton, the chair of Global Islamic Politics at the Alfred Deakin Institute, specialises in extremist movements in Australia and the process of radicalisation, and he had this to say. They're often vulnerable young people. They might be lonely. They might lack strong role models or a father figure, and they yearn for someone to make them feel welcome. People can quite quickly end up doing things that they wouldn't have imagined doing when it's what the group does. Demonizing minority groups only breeds the sort of resentment that makes angry, disenfranchised youth vulnerable to radicalization. We've done nothing but heighten cultural divides, extremism, and militantism, which is
The exact opposite of the aim of counterterrorism. Yeah.
exactly. What's more is if counterterrorism is any constitutional action taken to combat terrorism, then Fraser Anning's Christchurch statement is technically counterterrorism.
Yikes.
Random airport searches, counterterrorism. Racial profiling, counterterrorism. The manifestation of modern racism, as it is right now, can fall under the technicalities of counterterrorism. If this is what counterterrorism means right now, then it's time we changed our approach.
Okay, but what would be the most effective way to do that?
Well, we need to hold our politicians' feet to the fire about their rhetoric around terror and ensure that no group becomes a political scapegoat. Rather than punishing minorities for fringe groups, we now have to educate and protect the vulnerable before they meet up with like a Mr. Miyagi type extremist who unlocks their full potential. Counterterrorism shouldn't only be reactive because by then the damage is already done. Get a grassroots campaign happening. Redirect some of the funding of the Department of Home Affairs into educational programs to make disenfranchised youth feel more like part of the community. Professor Bratton states that we need to work much further upstream and much earlier. I found it is the small everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay. Small acts of kindness and love.
I did say no more Lord of the Rings. Why are all the correspondents so nerdy this week?
Middle Earth is better than real Earth, Rose, all right?
Okay, that's fine. Look, we will sort this out. But that is sadly all from us this week. Thank you, Rue. Thank you to Katherine and Jordan. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.